All right, guys, how's it going? Go ahead and post if you're there. I'll get started here in just a second. Taking a bit of a break from my last stream. Hey Gabby, hi Jace. You should also notice that the lag is down pretty considerably. All right, so let's talk Africa. Okay, please go ahead and complete the warm-up if you have not. Okay, it's how I'm taking attendance today. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and press on just for the sake of time. Okay, there is a cartoon here that will help you analyze your warm-up question to see if you got it right. Okay, for my purposes here, what I'd recommend you do is if you are just doing this lesson for the first time, I would actually pause it and then go back and watch that video because my goal here is to just make this as streamlined as possible so that you can do it at your pace, okay? So we're going to be explaining the causes and effects of the European Scramble for Africa, and then tracing and comparing those different different nations paths to independence and what their colonization experiences are like, okay? So again, don't feel bad if you have to pause this at any time. Go back, take more time to digest and deconstruct stuff. YouTube will save everything for later. Okay, cool. So, what that cartoon was talking about was something called the Scramble for Africa, and that is me referring to the European Scramble to try to basically who can conquer it fastest. Okay. So what you're going to do first, and again, this is where I'm going to, why I mentioned earlier, you might need to pause it and take some more time to do these things, okay, is that you can see I've just picked 7 countries here. There are different ones that actually do get involved besides these 7, but you are going to take just a moment to guess about how these 7 countries decided to carve Africa up. And you are going to use this map on Google to draw it. Okay, so if you go here and you just edit this, make a copy, okay, you can see that we have a little Google drawing to do, okay? Now, if you have never done this on Google Drawing before, this particular trick that we're going to do, you want to make sure that you follow these instructions that are on the screen very, very closely, okay? So first, we have technically 8 different boxes, okay? Never colonized makes up the 8th one. So you need to give, as it says right here, assign each country a color by creating boxes using the paint color tool. So I'll make never colonized white. Sure, why not? Britain can be red. Germany can be yellow. Portugal can be green, etc., right? Until you actually do it. Then what you will want to do, okay, is you are going to color this map by using what's called the polyline tool, okay? And this little GIF over here shows you how to get this. So it's right next to the shape tool, okay? So if you see where it says select line, you're going to click that little arrow right there, okay? And you're going to go down to where it says polyline, and that is going to be the tool that you're going to use here. And the reason why we use polyline is because you can see right there on the GIF what I'm doing is you have to go around the shape of whatever you want to draw, okay, until you get all the way back to the very beginning, and then you double click it. Okay, and that is going to make a shape. So for example, just watch what I do, okay, and again, you might need to zoom in to make your clicks more accurate. Okay. Also, pro tip here. Make sure you spread your clicks out, because if you happen to accidentally click on top of a click you've done, it thinks that you finished and it won't work. Okay. So if I click, you can see that blue line, click, 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 click. Now, I'm going to decide on which part of Africa was, I'm going to start with never colonized. So I'm going to guess that this was the part right here that was never colonized. Sure, why not? Okay, again, this is just a prediction. I'm going to change that to white. Okay, do you see how I did that? And so you're going to literally do right now what Europeans did, and you are going to actually carve up on the map what Africa is going to look like. So this is my next guess. I'm going to guess that Britain is going to get this chunk right here. And so I would make that red. And you're going to do this all the way around through all of Africa, including Madagascar. Don't forget them down there. Until you have literally carved up Africa that way. Just remember, to change the color of the shape so that it actually does it. Okay. Now, again, this is going to take you some time, so please feel free to pause either the live stream if you're watching that or the video, and then, carry on, okay, once you are done. Okay, so that is there. Alrighty, cool. So let's see, did you actually get it right? And this is what the map looks like for real, okay? It is a hot mess. And as that video told you, the conference where this is all decided was called the Berlin Conference. And you can look at the map of Africa there, and it has just been chopped up into pieces. Okay, so I want you to guess in your notes right here. Okay, if you just click and get them, you can get them. Go ahead and grab them before we do our mini lesson. Why do you think the lines were drawn here in any particular way that they were? Do you think there was any rationale or reason to why certain countries got certain areas, or why the lines went on certain parts? I'm kind of interested to hear what you think. Okay? So your notes are there for you to do that. When you're ready, then you can go on with me to the mini lesson. And again, I apologize, Gabby and Jace, if you haven't done those activities yet, because I know you guys are doing this with me live. But I'm just going to press on for the sake of time. Okay. Again, please don't hesitate to anybody who's doing this on their own to please pause, watch, digest. Okay. Again, the notes are here if you need to do them, and that is how I'll be taking attendance for today. Okay, so our essential questions: is greed good? And then, does might make right? Okay, the second question, if you've never heard that saying before, does might make right? That is a reference to because you can do something, does that mean that it is okay for you to do it? All right, cool. So let's go on. Okay, the context. All right. We have to then really start with that Berlin Conference. Okay. The Berlin Conference is really, really important. When it happens in 1884, okay, and you can see a picture of it right there with them pointing to a map in the background. All these European imperial powers sit there and they carve up Africa. No African nations are invited. It is an incredibly inequitable, and looking back at it, just horrific moment in human history. Okay, so how's this gonna go? Well, bad, to put it loosely. Okay, Africa is an incredibly, incredibly diverse place. Okay, hundreds and hundreds of different ethnic, linguistic groups who have individual, contexts and peoples that they're related to. It says there, over 3,000 different ethnic groups and 2,000 different languages. And that's not even like getting into the real messy stuff where like it gets, based on where you are, right? Like even smaller breaks down. But there are really, in some cases, no reason as to how Europeans draw the lines on those maps. In some cases, they're completely arbitrary. In other cases, they actually are very intentional about them. Because what they will do, because Europeans are not dumb, is they will intentionally jam different ethnic groups inside of countries and then use the two to play off of each other so that way they can stay in power. Okay, so like the ethnic group Somalia, they get split up, Somalis, they get split up into 5 different countries. Whereas, for example, the Hutus and Tutsis, which are kind of a more European-generated ethnic group in Rwanda, they very intentionally, Europeans use them to play off of each other. And so that is going to be an immensely, painful thing that is going to happen because of that eventually in the future. Okay, well, why are they doing this? Why the Berlin Conference? Why are they conquering things? And it goes back to the Industrial Revolution. Okay, that is kind of the starting point for it. Number one, European powers want some of the natural resources that Africa has: diamonds, gold, copper, salt. It also has to deal with overpopulation. So some European countries look at it as a way that they can, basically create what are called settler colonies. So Kenya would be an example of that. Uganda-ish, Morocco would be one. Algeria, another one to some extent. And in other cases, other things. It has to do with access to trade. So, Britain taking Egypt literally has a lot to do when that is done by the British government to deal with their trade with India. In some cases, it has to deal with just Europeans competing with one another to see who can take the most colonies. Again, it's kind of like an arms race in a way. And then the last one is more kind of a soft cultural reason, that it was this idea for Europeans called the white man's burden, where the Europeans believed it was their obligation to teach these savage African peoples, and again, I'm using their language there, and to uplift them into white European civilization. But again, we have to be really, really careful with that, because that can be it's going to be an immensely devastating thing on African peoples, this white man's burden. So there's some different causes and motivations, all right? And you'll see this play out in different colonies that we'll be looking at here in a few slides. Okay, the effects. As I mentioned earlier, Europeans are going to exploit rival ethnic groups, and they're going to play them off of each other. So Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda, again, is a really good way to remember that, just because of the Rwandan genocide that is eventually going to happen, which then brings me to other effects that are going to happen. Violence, civil war, genocide in many, many other cases and countries. Namibia, Rwanda, the Congo. Eventually, Darfur. It just goes on and on and on. And also just exposure to British, exposure to diseases that these people had not been experienced, that had not experienced before, when people like the British and the Germans and other folks show up. And that's going to be really, really hard. This is not going to be a happy, fun lesson if you haven't picked up on that. How you're going to end the lesson is pretty straightforward. There are 2 boxes down at the very bottom of your digital notes that you're doing, and I just want you to describe 2 things for me. How did 2 different African countries, how'd they get colonized, and how did they become independent? Now, you can describe that in a whole bunch of ways. You could use pictures, you could use text, you can use memes. But I want you to think about things like, what was the purpose of that colony? How did they become independent? Did their independence last? Was there violence? Was it peaceful? It kind of just, paint us a picture. So if you go on to the next slide, you can see the countries that you're going to pick from. And there are quite a few. I believe there are 7. Morocco, Libya, Ethiopia, Kenya, the Congo, Namibia, and South Africa. Okay, and if you click on any of these countries, it will zip you. So, for example, like here's Morocco. Okay, it will zip me off right to Morocco, and I can learn about that. Okay, and then I will click right here on the home button, and that will take me back. When you finish with diving into these particular countries, okay, there's a signpost down here that says "Click me to go on." this is the second crash course planning that we're going to do, because if you get assigned this topic to do for your crash course video, we need to make sure you're taking some time to actually think about this. Okay, now again, you can't do this Google drawing until you've actually completed the lesson. And second, I'm not collecting it, but it is something that if you don't do, you might be paying for it later in terms of you just not being prepared. Okay. So with that, I think I am all done, Gabby and Jace, with explaining everything. If you guys are still live, please post your questions that you have here. Otherwise, I'll hang around here for about 30 seconds, and then I'll stop the live stream so that way it is saved on YouTube. Okay? All right, so not seeing any questions, so yeah, we'll leave it there, and I hope you guys are staying safe, staying healthy, staying safe, and keep up the good work. Miss you guys. See you later.